My name is Waffles, and I'm a government whistleblower turned political commentator, and this is the last 24 hours in the news. It is currently June 23rd, 2025 at 1:22 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Here are the news highlights from the past 24 hours. U.S. strikes Iranian nuclear facilities in a major escalation. The U.S. military, with more than 125 aircraft, including B-2 bombers, bombed Iran's nuclear sites at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. The gross old man who paints himself orange called it a spectacular military success that obliterated those facilities. Iran condemned the strikes, vowed retaliation, possibly even closing the Strait of Hormuz, and placed its military on high alert. Global and domestic reactions, Allied support, Israel and the UK and Australia praised the strikes. The UN, EU, China, and Russia urged restraint. Congressional pushback. Bipartisan lawmakers are calling for a vote on war powers to limit the gross old man who paints himself orange's unilateral military actions. Heightened security alerts, homeland warnings. DHS issued a heightened threat environment advisory predicting cyber attacks from Iran-linked actors and possible hate crimes linked to the conflict. Travel advisories. The State Department ordered families and non-essential personnel to leave Lebanon amid regional tension. Financial market reactions. Oil surged to 5-month highs. Brent at 78.5, WTI at 75.35 amid concerns over Iran potentially disrupting the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. dollar strengthened while global equities remained cautious as investors awaited Iran's next moves. The U.S. bombing of Iranian nuclear sites marks a dramatic escalation that risks broader war. Lawmakers are mobilizing to challenge the presidential military authority, a test of constitutional war powers. Domestic cyber and terror threats have intensified, requiring vigilance. Energy costs and markets are already adjusting with implications for inflation and monetary policy. Here are the top international news highlights from the past 24 hours. U.S. airstrikes on Iranian nuclear sites. The U.S. launched precision strikes on Iran's Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan nuclear facilities, codenamed Operation Midnight Hammer, more like Operation Midnight Dumbass, using B-2 bombers, bunker buster bombs, and tomahawks. Iran's parliament voted to consider closing the Strait of Hormuz in retaliation, while Tehran vows escalation. The UN Security Council has convened, urging restraint. Oil prices surged to 5-month highs. Brent crude touched 78.53 a barrel. That is an increase of 1.97%, and WTI warmed to 75.35%, which is plus 2.04%, driven by fears of supply disruption from Middle East tensions. Goldman Sachs warns prices could reach $110 a barrel if the strait closure lasts a month, with broader market ripples in motion. Global airlines reroute Middle East flights. Airlines continue to reroute flights around Iran and Iraq airspace. Carriers to Dubai and Doha are cautiously resuming while others remain suspended. International reactions vary. Australia fully backed U.S. action but urged diplomacy to prevent further escalation. China and North Korea condemned the strikes. China warned U.S. credibility is damaged, and North Korea denounced violations of sovereignty. The UN called the escalations perilous, and world markets remain jittery. Russia attacks on Kiev overnight. Russian drones and missiles struck Kiev, killing 5 civilians, igniting fires, including in residential zones and near metro shelters. U.S. involvement deepens a dangerous regional conflict with potential global repercussions. Oil price spikes affect inflation, central bank policy, and consumer costs worldwide. Flight disruptions highlight growing risks in civilian aviation. Divergent global response reveals shifting alliances and mounting tensions at the UN. Russian strikes on Ukraine illustrate that armed conflict continues unabated on multiple fronts. We will not be covering any additional issues in today's coverage. I think that's about enough. I think a lot of people are trying to, I know I am personally, like, trying to figure out how to psychologically cope with the fact that, you know, one day we were living normal life and this dude's only been in office for a few months and everything's just turned into absolute chaos, and trying to figure out how you're going to calculate your own personal future and your own life in the middle of just this ridiculous shit show that is taking place is incredibly difficult. So I am expecting that I'm probably not the only one that is dealing with what is deemed, you know, it's considered to be war fog is what it's called. I really hope that, you know, something may happen to improve the situation. Other than that, you know, we the people need to be looking at where we do and do not have the capacities to try and deal with the situations that we are facing. The protests, I do think, have been helpful because it is a physical representation of the people's disgust in what has been taking place that can be seen worldwide, regardless of what language you speak. And as Americans, we also see each other out there in the streets, you know, so it's a physical representation of what is actually going on versus the propaganda that's shoved down our throats and the ridiculous crap that the gross old man who paints himself orange tries to convince people of. Other than that, we need to start looking at what it is that we need to do to improve the state of our nation. One of the things that has been on my mind a lot lately is that we, the people, do have the ability to write the law and pass petitions, and I think that we ought to consider starting to do that. So far, you know, I mean, from what I've seen, there's been what looks like, and this is just my opinion right here, what looks like multiple coup attempts that took place between December and January. And the United States did not do as well as other nations in handling such a situation, if that is what is taking place here. You know, I'm expressing my opinion. And part of the reason for that is because we do not have the ability to hold recall elections because it is not yet written in law. We are not appropriately, as a nation, set up to deal with such an emergency situation as what we may potentially and are likely dealing with in this particular scenario. And I do think that if there's a chance that the Congress is corrupted, and if there's a chance, and I'm just expressing my opinion and I have the right to do so, if there's a chance that the presidential office may have been stolen, or, you know, that this person needs to be removed and the Congress is preventing that, and if there's any possibility that this may be a potential coup, and I'm just expressing, you know, hypothetically speaking, theoretically speaking, you know, using my rational sense of mind from a logical standpoint, it would probably be a really good idea if the United States had the ability to do the same thing that a lot of these other nations did, which is hold recall elections. If somebody is not acting in the interest of the nation, they should be removed from office. If a president is committing treason, there's currently no means other than Congress to remove them from office. So somebody, if they're committing treason, they're engaging in acts of war against the American people. This is by definition of U.S. law. And, or aiding and abetting the enemies of the United States. And this is for the United States, it's U.S. law. So, I just want to say from my own personal perspective, you know, watching all of this going on after having my life completely destroyed, and trying to figure out how I'm going to put it back together, and watching this disgusting Oompa Loompa motherfucker go on a rampage. You know, we have loopholes in the law that are making it so that foreign investors are able to purchase our politicians. They're not going to fix that on their own. We need to find ways to fix these problems, and I think having the ability to recall politicians would be a really good start. We need to get petitions started. We need to be writing the law. That is my opinion. This is the news for the last 24 hours.